All right, well, I think we can get started. So I just want to welcome everyone. I think we're going to have some people rolling in, but just welcome to all of our ambassadors. Welcome to our newcomers, and those of you who have joined before. So we're very excited that tonight we're going to go through some very meaningful content, but very excited to see everyone on this call and to reconnect with some special time this evening. So I'd like to quickly introduce myself and some people that work with me on the team here at Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes. I'm Tony Guglielmo, Director of ARTEFFECT, and I am joined by a few of my teammates. So I would first like to introduce some of my teammates here where I'm based in Santa Monica. First, Emmy Mata, who is a program coordinator. Emmy, would you like to unmute and say hello to the group?
Yes, hi everyone. So excited for tonight's presentation. Thank you all so much for being here.
And also Connor Walden, who is a program coordinator.
Hi, everybody. I'm Connor. I'm grateful to be here and be part of the Artifact team and excited for tonight.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that Emmy and Connor are very new to the team. This is like their first 2 weeks, so we're very excited to welcome them to ARTEFFECT. And also Katie Ward, who you may have seen before in some of the other programs. Katie is a program assistant helping us. Katie, would you like to say hello?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to see all of you here. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names show up. And so watch for me. I'll be posting links in the chat. And I'm just so thrilled you're all here.
Great, thank you. And also tonight we are joined by some of our colleagues from the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes in Fort Scott, Kansas. So I'm delighted that they are on the program, and I'd like to also introduce them. We have Karen Wilterding, who is Communications Director. Karen, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight. We're excited to have a wonderful program by Megan Helberg.
Yes.
And also Norm Kennard, Executive Director of the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be here again. And what a wonderful program we have with ARTEFFECT. And tonight, one of America's great teachers, Megan Helberg, is going to share with us. So we're excited about that. And I see Leslie down here, some friends that we know. Hi, Leslie. But thanks so much for all you do with this program. And these Zooms are just really, really special. Thank you.
Yes, thank you both. Thank you, and nice to see you. And I'm also delighted that Megan Helberg will lead us in this topic for this evening. And I wanted just to share for those of you that are new, and just a refresher about ARTEFFECT for a little bit. So ARTEFFECT is an initiative that, if we could just go to the next slide. Oh, and our definition for unsung heroes, which I know all of us have been working with this definition, but just to call to mind our unsung heroes, who are people that have made an extraordinary impact in the lives of others through their actions and service to others in society, and who have gone largely unrecognized. So I know that all of you are familiar with the unsung heroes from Lowell Milken Center, and you've been working through the biographies and learning about these individuals and their inspiring stories. And also just to call to mind our unsung heroes in our everyday lives that are around us every day, inspiring us, including our teachers and educators. So on the next slide is just a quick mission statement for those of you that are new. ARTEFFECT is an initiative that invites educators and their students to explore the diverse stories of the unsung heroes from the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes and their invaluable lessons as role models from history. And this is an expanding initiative right now. We are offering an annual competition for students in grades 6 through 12. We also are offering professional development and also exhibitions. And on this slide, you can see some of the overarching goals for ARTEFFECT. So broadly, the goals are to support professional development for educators, and we have been running a series of online sessions this year. We've also introduced an ambassadors program, which is an online fellowship, and we have 27, 28 people across the country and in 17 states and Canada that are working to bring the Artifact curriculum into their classrooms and communities. And we're very excited with this inaugural cohort this year to see their capstone projects as they work with this curriculum. Another goal for Artifact is obviously to strengthen student learning through the visual arts, which we do through the competition and through the work that educators are bringing into their classroom, and really to help students discover the power of art making and the power of their own voice through and their ability to make an impact through sharing artworks and championing the story of an unsung hero through the visual arts. And then also to inspire others through this work that can see the products of these creative endeavors, and to see what is happening. So everyday heroes in our communities, and just to really underscore the message from our founder that one individual has the power to make a positive and profound difference in the lives of others. And this is a statement that our founder, Mr. Lowell Milken, really guides the initiative with this statement, because it speaks to not just the students and the educators and the unsung heroes, but to all of us. And so we just want to also thank our founder for making this program available to all of us. Okay, great. So on the next slide, I am going to turn the program over to Megan Helberg. And as some of you may already know Megan, she is a well, it's my pleasure to introduce her. So I just want to first mention that she's calling in from rural Nebraska, and that's where she's an English teacher. But I know that some of you know her because she is also a 2021 Lowell Milken Center Fellow. And she was also 2020 Nebraska Teacher of the Year. Her expertise is in Holocaust and genocide education. And just the amazing thing that I've learned about Megan, besides that she's living in a very small town, which blows my mind, from Los Angeles, is that she travels a lot. And so she is able to really be local global in her capacity to bring education to her students. So very delighted and feel very privileged that she will bring her expertise to bear on this subject as she guides us through this topic. So I would like to turn it over to Megan.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Hello, everybody. I am Megan Helberg. As Tony said, I am calling in from the ranch that I live on and that I grew up on. So there's a collection of pictures of me there in the bottom left. That's me checking pastures and putting out some salt and mineral for the cattle and all of that good stuff. But I am very grateful that I've been able to travel all around this world, and a lot of it has been due to my passion and interest in Holocaust and genocide education. And it's weird to kind of consider myself like an expert in this field, because I feel that there's so much I still have to learn. And that is one of the things that I love about learning about the Holocaust, is that I never want to be a know-it-all. And with this particular subject matter, I'm continually learning, and there's every day more stories and information emerging still today, almost 80 years later. And so I just want to thank you for having me here, and that even though I'm a small town ranch girl, that I want, and what I tell my students every day is that I was able to do all of this stuff that you see here on the screen and more, all from rural Nebraska. And so I want to empower students that live in every little nook and cranny across this country and across this world, that no matter where you're from or how you've grown up, you can go and do and see all the things. And I'm with Holocaust and Genocide Ed. I have been trained by the United States Holocaust Memorial and Museum in Washington, D.C., and I continue to work with them, and I will work with them again this summer. And then I also have been a part of Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, Israel, and I actually spent the month of July, just this last July, in Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. And so that has been a little interesting now with everything going on in that region, but I feel very thankful and grateful that I was able to spend time there in those areas. So here we go. There's all my contact information. feel free to reach out. I want to say at the beginning, we are not going to learn all about the Holocaust tonight. That takes years and months, and we will never cover it all. And so I just want you to know that this is kind of an introductory overview of some of the basics and foundation that you might need when approaching Holocaust art or Holocaust education. So please, I am serious when I say if you have questions, if you want to know more about a particular area, please contact me. I'm here to help you and support you. Little brief overview of the agenda tonight. First, we're going to talk about, is it appropriate to remember the Holocaust through artistic representation? Sometimes that is a little bit of an iffy area and gray area, and that is why we are having this session tonight, so we can appropriately teach ourselves and our students how to approach the Holocaust through art. We're going to go over some guidelines for teaching about the Holocaust. We're going to look at some Holocaust artwork that has been done by both survivors and victims. We'll get into a little bit of Irina Sendler and the wonderful Lowell Milken Center in Fort Scott, Kansas. Then we'll look at some student artwork that was submitted for ARTEFFECT, and then I'm always up for your questions. Okay, so step one, remembering the Holocaust through visual art. First of all, I just would like, if you guys want to post in the chat, or if a couple of you want, feel free to unmute here, or maybe you're just thinking these things to yourself as we're going to kind of just get our minds in the right area and get focused and ready for what's to come here. I just want you to ask yourself, what is your level of comfort when it comes to discussing the Holocaust and genocide with your students? We are all at different places when it comes to knowledge of the Holocaust and of art and of unsung heroes. I want to start right away by saying I am not an artist. I am not an art teacher. I am an English teacher who has a passion for human rights, social justice, the Holocaust and genocide, and what it can teach us today. So I'm learning, and I'm learning from the best. Some of them are on this call, and I hope we all have our areas of expertise, and I want to rely on you for your areas of expertise, and I hope you can rely on me for areas in Holocaust and genocide education. I'm seeing some of the stuff in the chat here.
So we are
Agreed.
seeing people saying that they feel comfortable. Leslie, very comfortable as a history, social studies teacher, but we have a lot of different people in the group. So yeah, this is great. So thank you for sharing that out.
And what would make you feel confident in your ability to lead a lesson about visual representations of the Holocaust and other genocides? We're going to go through a little bit of that tonight, but of course, there's many more resources out there that are available to you. So maybe keep a list or jot down some notes throughout tonight if there's something you feel specifically that you might need, that we can help you. And then number 3, what tools or strategies have you used to facilitate thoughtful and appropriate classroom discussions about complex topics? These questions, there are many complex topics, not just the Holocaust or genocide. And so us as educators, we really have to lay that foundation for our students. And so I'm always curious to hear, what are you guys doing already that works? What have you tried in the past that didn't work and you've learned from it? Both of these things are valuable to us as educators to share with each other. Yes, elementary school teachers especially. I want to just make a point that we all are aware of, but sometimes it's nice to point it out, is that when you as an educator are preparing yourself for difficult and complex topics like the Holocaust, it's really important of where we are getting our materials and where we are getting our information. So I just want to point out to please use heavily vetted sources like the USHMM in DC and their website. like Yad Vashem, and there's several others throughout the country that have done an amazing job of putting heavily vetted quality resources up on their websites for educators to use. There's really no use going someplace that's not heavily vetted, because now in today's world we have these, we do have access to the resources that have been heavily vetted. I agree, USHMM is awesome. I think we're ready to go on to the next one, maybe? Okay, so remembering the Holocaust. Before you are asking students to create their own pieces of art depicting events and or people during the Holocaust, it's really important for students to get a bit of background knowledge or a foundation of understanding for what was going on during that time period. They need to have that foundational level knowledge, which means you as the educator has to have that foundation, that strong foundation to build upon for your students. So we have some questions here that, you know, we need to pose to ourselves and our students, and we have to have a certain set of a kind of a mindset when we come to these topics. And it's okay to tell your students, hey guys, we're about ready to start a unit that I'm going to need you to bring your mature self. I'm going to need you to bring your emotions and maturity for this particular subject matter. And it's okay to say that up front to kind of set the tone for your students. We need to have sensitivity, awareness around this issue. Some questions that have made Holocaust, representing the Holocaust through art, a little controversial is, we want to make sure that we are letting our students know that we do not want them to create a piece of artwork that is replicating what the Holocaust was like. That is not what we are aiming for here. We are aiming for them to learn about the Holocaust, especially one person, an unsung hero, and portray how did that person make them feel? What do they want to represent in that art that can highlight the unsung hero? That we are not just trying to draw a picture of the Holocaust. You know, that is not what this is about. What can art teach us about the Holocaust? In what ways can art be used to remember the Holocaust? Should there be limitations and boundaries to the artistic representation of the Holocaust? Where should the boundaries be? What is the intended message of the artwork? So I would really encourage you to pose these questions not only to yourself, but to your students as well. And I would say, you know, is it appropriate to create artwork about the Holocaust? Yes, when done with intention, meaning, and perspective. And that is what we are going to go over tonight. Okay, step 2, 10 guidelines for teaching about the Holocaust. So when I travel around the country to do professional development for teachers who are wanting to learn more about the Holocaust and how to approach the subject in their classrooms, because it can be a little nerve-wracking. You can't just go into the classroom and on day one and say, all right, we're going to learn about the Holocaust today, everybody. And here's a couple things that I learned or that I heard, you know, on some program I saw on TV. That is not responsible teaching, and that is not what we want to do. So one of the foundational exercises that I do with all people that are wanting to learn more is these 10 guidelines for teaching about the Holocaust. You can find these on the USHMM website if you are wanting to do a little bit more in depth. I actually have seen many teachers who print these off and have them hanging in their classroom as a reminder to them and their students as they are tackling tough issues like the Holocaust. However, you will notice that these 10 guidelines work beyond the Holocaust. They work for many difficult times in history that may be a little bit difficult to teach in your classroom. So we're going to go over these. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. But please, if anybody has a question, or please enter them in the chat. I'm way behind on the chat. There's like 36 chats in there that I haven't read yet. So if people from the Artifact want to help me field any of these, if they need to be immediate responses, please let me know. Okay. Okay, I think we can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Connor. So it is really important to define the term Holocaust. This may sound shocking to those of you who are not in the Holocaust education world, but if you go and look up the definition of the Holocaust, you will find about 20 different definitions depending on what resource you are using. And so I want to start by just making that very clear, and that I am using the USHMM's definition for the Holocaust. Yad Vashem's is slightly different. The Anne Frank House is slightly different. So you will see that there are nuances to this term Holocaust. The Holocaust was the systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million European Jews by the Nazi German regime and its allies and collaborators. The Holocaust was an evolving process that took place throughout Europe between 1933 and 1945. Why do we say 1933? Even though World War II and Germany didn't invade Poland until 1939. Anybody, I mean, I'm sure several of you know. But we say that the Holocaust starts in 1933 because that is when Hitler rose to power. So that is when we say that the Holocaust began. So I just want to point out to you that when you go through these definitions with your students, you may have to go over some vocabulary. What is systematic? Okay, this means it was step by step. There was a system in place. What is state sponsored, right? Well, this was sponsored by the government, okay? What does collaborators mean? Okay, so we just want to be clear that you could take probably 10 or 15 minutes with each one of these guidelines when you're going over them if you choose to with your students. Number 2, the Holocaust was not inevitable. The Holocaust took place because individuals, groups, and nations made decisions to act or not to act. Focusing on those decisions leads to insights into history and human nature and fosters critical thinking. Just because a historical event took place and it is documented in textbooks and on film does not mean that it had to happen. This is where I want to point out, this is a crucial one for unsung heroes. This is where unsung heroes make an appearance. They tried, or they did, alter the course of history. They are the ones that made these decisions or chose not to make certain decisions to help alter the course of history for at least one person and maybe more. Avoid simple answers to complex questions. If you are anything like me, your students ask all sorts of questions, and it is sometimes tempting, especially with difficult topics like the Holocaust, to give them a pretty cut and dry answer and move on so you don't go down this rabbit hole of 2 hours later and, oh my goodness, where did the class period go? However, I would really encourage you. Sometimes people say, oh, if you can explain it simply, then you really know it well. That may work for some things, but not so much with the Holocaust. Sometimes there are very difficult questions that involve an array of answers and needs to have a discussion about it. So if you do not know something, you guys all know this because you're awesome educators, but just reminding ourselves all the time, it's okay to say, I don't know that. Let's look that up together right now. Or, hey, I'll look that up and get back to you. Because the last thing we want to do with the Holocaust and genocide is to spread falsities. We want to make sure what we are telling our students is rock solid, it is truth, it is fact, especially in a world where there is increasing anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. It is incredibly important to make sure that you are relaying actual information to your students. Number 4, strive for precision of language. This is incredibly important. There are some examples there, and this is for many adults as well that I'll be talking to, and they will say, oh, all the concentration camps were killing centers, or, all Germans were collaborators. That is a slippery slope of language to use, and that kind of goes back to the previous one, is that we have to have a certain level of understanding of this event and time period, so we are not passing on information that is actually not correct and it's inaccurate. And we want to avoid that at all costs. Again, there may be some vocabulary things that you need to go over with your students. Number 5, strive to balance the perspectives that inform your study of the Holocaust. We know that we want to encourage students to consider why a source was created, who created it, who is the intended audience, are there any biases, are there any gaps that occurred, omissions, and how the information has been used to interpret various events. This second paragraph is really important and something that I don't think a lot of people think about until we enter into this realm. Most documentation about the Holocaust comes from the perspective of the perpetrators. They are the ones that were taking the pictures. They are the ones that were documenting in their, ledgers. They were the ones taking video. So we have to be very careful when showing pictures and video from the Holocaust, because we have to realize that most of that came from the Nazis and their allies and collaborators. It's great when we can put in some survivor testimonies, collections that humanize individuals in the richness and fullness of their lives. It's really important to try to show Jewish life before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and after the Holocaust. We want our students to know that Jewish people and other victim groups lived full, vibrant lives before the Holocaust and went on to have vibrant lives and enrich their communities after the Holocaust as well. Number 6, avoid comparisons of pain. My students really like to ask me the question, maybe some of you have got this too, well, what camp was the worst? And the best answer that I've ever heard to this was from my dear mentor, Paul Weiser, who lived in Arizona. He recently passed. He always said, the one you were in. So yes, there may be certain things that we want to compare. Well, they had this at this camp, or they did this over here. But what each individual was going through and experiencing at that time, that was the worst for them. It does not do us any good to compare what was worse, what was a little bit better. And this goes for all genocides and all difficult times in history. And even today, it does not do us good to compare who is suffering more. Everyone is that was, involved in this and was a victim group. Oh boy, this is a big one. Number 7, avoid romanticizing history. It is really tempting as educators that we want to have a happy ending. We want everything to end up nicely and have a little bit of ray of hope to leave within our students. But the cold, hard truth and reality is that there was no happy ending during the Holocaust. And we need to be very careful about selecting stories and selecting lessons that we do with our students, that we're not just picking ones that end happy or we're not just picking ones that leave us filled with joy and hope. Those are amazing, and those stories need to be shared as well. But it's just vitally important that students realize most of the stories during the Holocaust did not have a happy ending. And so we want to try not to romanticize uh, just the positives that occurred. Now, however, this is when the unsung hero comes in again. When portraying your unsung hero, be clear that they were unique. They were truly doing something courageous and different than everybody else during this time. And that is what makes them an unsung hero. They did do something, most did not. So we want to make sure that they are unsung heroes because they are unique and they did do something during this time. Number 8, contextualize the history. Events of the Holocaust, and particularly how individuals and organizations behaved at that time, should be placed in historical context. The Holocaust should be studied in the context of European history as a whole to give students a perspective. Again, they teach courses on this that are, you could do for 10 or 20 years of your lifetime. So you do have to kind of know yourself, know your students, and what do they really need to know before they can enter in to this artifact realm of their teaching. But maybe if you could spend just 2 minutes going over World War One and kind of what the conditions were like in Germany after World War One, the depression that followed, many of their male population was dead after World War One. They were embarrassed. They were looking for any sort of glimmer of hope to restore Germany back to their former glory. So it's important for them to kind of realize a little bit of these steps leading up to the Holocaust. Number 9, also a hugely important guideline here. Translate statistics into people. In any study of the Holocaust, the sheer number of victims challenges comprehension. When you say 6 million, okay, yeah, that's a big number. But I have actually no idea of wrapping my brain around of how large of a number that is. And so instead of saying 6 million Jews died, maybe consider saying one person died 6 million times. Start to think about it in that way. It's hard to fathom 6 million. And also in here, it's very important. I'm looking at that last paragraph that we portray people in the fullness of their lives and not just as victims. And this is where we want to be very careful about not equating human lives to paper clips or other sorts of objects or lessons that were at one time quite popular. And I know that the intentions behind those lessons were meant with full hearts, but we just want to be very careful there of doing some of these kind of gimmicky that could be seen as gimmicky or disrespectful to the victims. We want to make sure that they are seen as individuals. Our last one, make responsible methodological choices. Educators who teach about the Holocaust, we need to be honest and accurate that people were dehumanized, they were brutalized, they were killed. How do we do that without, how do we do that and still try to make our students feel safe in the classroom where they can still engage in learning and critical thinking and they're not just overwhelmed with the brutality of it all? This has been a huge shift in Holocaust education over the years. Back in the day, it was show graphic image, show graphic image, show graphic image to get the point across. Now we are realizing that this may not be the best approach. Instead of showing a pile of dead bodies, can you show a pile of discarded suitcases that people brought to the camps? Think about these things. This also depends a lot on the grade and age level that you're teaching. You know your students best. what is safe for them and what is not safe for them and what they're not ready for. We also have to ask ourselves with this one, what is respectful to the victim and their family? If you just slap up a picture of a pile of dead bodies, do you want that to be the lasting image of your loved one? Is that how you would like them to be remembered? So we need to think about these things and also make responsible choices that's honoring the victims as well. So just kind of remember, going along with the guidelines, again, this is something that has shifted over time. Simulations. We really want to try to stay away from simulations, no matter how small or large scale they may be. And here are the two best reasons that I've ever heard for avoiding simulations. Number one, we will never be able to know what it was like to be in the Holocaust. Plain and simple. Number two, even if we could, why would we want to make our students feel like that? So I'm just going to leave that there with simulations. We've all made mistakes. If you've done simulations in the past, we're learning. That's why we're here. We're learning to know these things and kind of get updated on some of the latest methods for Holocaust education. We want to avoid the gimmicky exercises, the word searches, the counting objects, the crossword puzzles. You can do a lot more meaningful things out there. The graphic images, which we talked about, we want to refrain from using text or films that exploit students emotionally or are inaccurate. There are a ton of inaccurate Holocaust education materials out there. And so again, going back to the please use heavily vetted resources. I will throw out the one that seems to get the most attention. Some of you may already know what I'm going to say. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. A lot of people like that book and want to read that book. That's the first thing that they mention. Oh, have you read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, or have you seen that movie? Without going too far into it, we need to really consider, is that the best resource that we and if it is, encourage your school to put that one on the shelf. If students want to read it, that's great. But you as a teacher, you can find something better there. Okay. You guys have been sitting and listening for a long time, so thank you. I appreciate it. We're going to keep zipping right along here. So now, once you have gone through those guidelines as an educator, maybe you're going over those guidelines with your students. If you have time, that's kind of up to you. But now you're thinking, okay, I want my students to participate in ARTEFFECT. Some of them may select an unsung hero from the Holocaust or another genocide. There are a couple questions here that you need to ask yourself. What is my rationale for introducing this topic to my students? Why now? Why this year? Why this class? Ask yourself, what's going on in our school climate? What's going on in our community? What's going on in our country? You may get asked these questions from admin, from parents. So you need to, I don't want that to scare you, but you're a responsible educator. So you have already thought about your rationale, and you're going to have a very professional answer that's spot on for why now, why this class, why the Holocaust. And then what are some ways that we can care for students as we educate them about the Holocaust and other genocides? Again, that a lot of that starts with you as the educator and you knowing your students in your school and your community the best. There's a quote here that I want to mention that, you know, every individual makes decisions and every decision is individual. We can think about that in the context of the Holocaust. We can think about that in the context of us as educators, of how our students approach their unsung hero artifact projects is that every individual makes decisions and every decision is individual. So we have to know the why behind what we are doing and be ready to speak about it if needed. Okay, step 3, bridging with visual art. We're going to, so this, as I mentioned, this last July, I was honored to spend a month at Yad Vashem, which is a memorial and museum for the Holocaust in Jerusalem and Israel. And they are quite unique in that they actually have an art museum at the Holocaust Museum. And the art museum is all pieces of work by either survivors or victims of the Holocaust. And they have a whole branch of their museum that is dedicated to the art. And it was, I found, very moving and just very impactful and powerful. This little clip of this video will really help set us up for viewing art made during the Holocaust. So please put your full attention and focus on this video. Thank you. Thank you, Connor. That was flawless. Very good. I was lucky enough to learn from that woman. She is the director of the art museum at Yad Vashem, and I just feel incredibly grateful to have learned from her. And her questions and teachings and lessons are still with me today, and I'm passing those on to my students in Taylor, Nebraska, population 190. They are learning about Holocaust art and representing the Holocaust through art now as they enter the artifact stages. So what I'd like to do now is we are going to view 5 artworks that were either done by victims or survivors of the Holocaust. And there are 10 questions here. Maybe those are, it seems like Katie already put them in the chat. Way to go, Katie. Thank you so much. So if you guys can look at the chat, and we are going to view some pieces, and I would like you to, I think we're doing okay on time, and let's look at so just, should I go through these really quick? You guys can read these. Okay, when was the artwork created? What events were happening in the world at this time? Where is the setting and why is it significant? What or who's the subject matter? Who's the artist? What colors are prominent? What do the colors convey? What is the artwork about? Does it tell a story, evoke a feeling, document an event, present an idea? What do you think the artist was feeling? How does viewing this artwork make you feel? And how has your opinion changed from when you first saw the artwork until now? So those are some of the questions we're going to be going over. And if you want to unmute and share for, 10, 15, 20 seconds on something, or if you feel more comfortable putting it in the chat, that's fine too. But let's go ahead and look at this first piece of art. Okay, I am going to ask you guys on this one. Well, you know some of these are during the Holocaust. So if I were to ask you question number 2, what events were happening in the world at the time this artwork was created? This might be a question that you pose to your students. Okay. We know that this particular piece of art was done in 1939. This is, of course, the beginning of World War II. You guys can unmute if you want.
The globe is darkened where you're looking and you can see like a shadow starting to move across what looks like Europe. So if it was done during that time, it could represent that there's like something looming, that maybe that artist thought that, something bad was coming about since it was closer to the beginning, but not really seeing the full effect of what the Holocaust would be if it was closer to the beginning.
Awesome, Jada. Thank you for speaking up. And that is such a great observation of the shadow on the globe.
I would like to add that one technique that we used or I used to my kiddos is noticing and wondering. Like I noticed that like there's a man with a cane, which I infer he's older with his head down, but I also wonder why is he isolated with a globe in a room with also an archway peering out into like outside or something? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Miss Lewis, for sharing. That's perfect.
I'd like to say that my first thing was this man cowering in below the table that is propping up the globe, which signifies the world. And there is a dark shadow covering up what's happening. And the open door with no one coming through it signifies that no one's coming to help.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, we actually studied this one at Yad Vashem, and you mentioned that the man, his head is like almost touching the corner of the table, you know, and the just the placement and the dimensions of this piece of work. Why is the table so long? Why is he almost touching his head to the edge of the table? And I want you guys, maybe it's hard to see on your screens, but can you see through the doorway? Can you see what's outside? Can you guys see that?
I was looking at it and it looked like either it was fall or winter and nothing is there, or the trees are burnt. There doesn't seem to be anything growing. However, there is light. And my feeling of this man, you know how when you're in a lot of pain, you're rocking back and forth and holding your face. And I almost felt like he was actually hitting his head on the table. And that was my feeling. Like I focused immediately on the globe, and then my eye bounced outside and finally saw this figure in the dark. So that was my reaction.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, outside the doorway, I know it's kind of, but you were pretty much spot on. The trees are actually dead, and the birds out there are like crows. And so it's almost this feeling of I'm alone in here, but if I go out there, it could be worse. Everything is dead and dying. So again, if anybody has any, what do you think about any other comments? Because then I'm going to tell you about this piece of art and this artist.
An interesting comment was made in the chat by Stefania, which is that the crouched figure is repeated in the map masses of the continents. So the posture is kind of similar to the shape we see on the globe.
Oh gosh, that's great. I had never thought about that before. Ah, this is what's so great about discussing pieces of art.
When I start talking to my students about the Holocaust, I tell them about Hitler's T4 program. We start with that, the euthanasia of people who are handicapped and, you know, sick children in hospitals, elderly, things like that, what he called life unworthy of life or useless feeders. And
Yes.
the man with the cane could represent that whole population that was going to be eliminated.
Good. Good thoughts there, Sue. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about this artist. And as I'm telling you about this artist, maybe some of the things in the piece of artwork will resonate. The artist is Felix Nussbaum. The artwork is called The Refugee. Felix was born in 1904 in Germany. and he died in 1944 at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Felix studied art in Hamburg, Germany in 1922, and a year later continued his studies in Berlin. He continued to study art until 1929. In 1932, he was so accomplished as an artist that he was awarded the Rome Prize, and with this came a scholarship to study in Rome. Following the Nazi rise to power, he wandered through Europe, and in 1935 sought refuge in Belgium for himself and his partner, another artist. Initially, the couple were able to live peacefully in Belgium. 2 years later, they moved to Brussels. Following the German occupation of Belgium in May 1940, Nussbaum was arrested and interned in a camp in southern France. Several months later, he escaped and returned to Brussels, where he went into hiding with his wife. He created dozens of artworks reflecting the anguish of the persecuted Jews. Only with the help of friends who secretly safeguarded his artworks did these survive the war. In June 1944, the couple was denounced, arrested, and transferred. In July, they were deported on the last transport from Belgium to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where they were murdered. So after I read that piece about Felix Nussbaum, the part in there, this being titled The Refugee, how him and his partner, it says, wandered Europe, for a few years, that many of the things that you guys said really resonate after reading this. So I now want to ask you question number 10 on the sheet. How has your opinion changed about the artwork from the time you started looking at it until now?
I would love to share because I now knowing that story, I see a sense of loneliness. It's empty. He, feeling lost, having to constantly be relocated with his partner, having constantly not have a place to call home due to everything that was happening in the world at the time, really puts into perspective, that sense of barren, that sense of not belonging, and the feelings that are felt when you feel alone. And I think that that's very reflective in this.
Thank you, Jada. All right. I'd like to move on to the next slide if we can. We're not going to go over all 5, but in the lesson plan, there are links to all 5 of these pieces of artwork. These are all from Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, and it has these really great write-ups about each artist and the artwork, and there are several more in the collection. These are just a small sampling of what they have in the collection. So this one was actually done. We can go ahead and go to the next slide where it tells a little bit about the artist. This was done by a survivor. Joseph was in the Loach ghetto, and so this is a work that was done mainly in the ghettos instead of maybe while in hiding like the previous artist. This artist was also transported to Auschwitz-Birkenau in 1944, and he was liberated in May of 1945 from another camp that he had been transported to. He then immigrated to Sweden. He continued to be a prolific artist, and his friend and him recovered the artworks that had been produced during the Holocaust that were hidden in the Loach ghetto, and they were actually returned to him after the war. This is one of those where you don't hear of that happening a lot. Those of you that studied this or know about art, there was a lot of art looting that occurred during the Holocaust. So many pieces of artwork were never recovered. Maybe they're still out there, but not in the hands of the owners or their families. We'll go to the next one, please. This is one that you saw play in the Yad Vashem video as well. This is done by a survivor as well, Leo Haas. Leo Haas actually ended up, he survived, and then him and his wife adopted a 3-year-old son of their artist friend who was murdered in Auschwitz. This one is interesting to me because when you first look at this, it's kind of hard to tell what it is. So you really have to train your eye to go in deeper. And those are people. You see wagons with dead people. This is a death march. And then the next one is one that we are going to talk about a little bit. Okay, so on this one, I would like to ask you guys, this one we notice right away has vibrant color in it, but we also notice that it almost looks like the heads are almost like kind of cut off at the top, like it wasn't centered or something, but this is indeed the piece of artwork here. So let's have some comments, discussions, anything that you'd like to share here about color, or maybe who the artist might have been, what the artist was feeling or thinking.
I was just going to say, this one is so different than all the others in the sense that it looks like a mother and daughter in a happy moment, right? So you have the bright colors and what appears to be like a very ordinary, pleasant day, which then is maybe a memory of what things were, is my guess.
Thank you for sharing, Leslie.
I think that it might have, to me looks like, because I've heard of it before, artwork that was done by a young girl or something in captivity, in a camp where somebody was trying to keep them entertained or encouraged or something, and they were trying to get the kids to draw about happier times or an experience that they had that was good, to get away from the thought of what's going on.
Good, thank you for sharing.
When I saw this, one, I thought it was, to piggyback on the last speaker, it felt to me like it was done by a child. And then looking at it again, remind me of some Chagall's work where they have the floating people. And then it felt to me like maybe these were kind of like dreams, a dream, or ghosts, or somebody who is gone now, and so floating like spirit. And it does feel like very childlike as well.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead.
I have a thought. It's Stefania. I finally figured out how to unmute the it really feels to me like puppets, and they have the tippy toes and they're suspended, and it could even be done from the prisons, the being in prison and seeing these outside, observing from the outside. That's all. That's just thinking.
Thank you.
I would like to add to Stephanie. Sorry if I missed but I heard you say earlier, Megan, that there were not like art supplies available for like the people during the Holocaust, and oftentimes they would like document what they saw and use art as a way of escapism. And I think that this was a piece probably drawn by someone that's looking toward the light in the tunnel, to bring joy, to spark joy of a hopeful time of some sort in that during that time.
Very good. Thank you. All right, I'm going to share with you about this one. So you can go to the next slide. This piece of art was done by Nellie Cole. She was born in 1935, and it's called Girls in the Field. Nellie was born into an affluent family. During the Soviet occupation in 1939, her father went into hiding to avoid being deported. Following the German occupation in 1941, Nellie and her family were expelled to a ghetto. Her 5-year-old brother was seized and murdered at the age of 5. With her mother, she joined a group that tried, without success, to flee to Hungary. In 1943, her father convinced some friends of theirs, a Christian couple in the city, to provide refuge for 8-year-old Nellie and her mother. He intended to join them later. In order to pass the long hours in hiding, her mother encouraged her to paint, write stories, and keep a diary. In 1944, the two, this would be Nellie and her mother, realized that they were the family's sole survivors. They remained in Europe for several years while Nellie continued to study art. She finally immigrated to the United States, where she continued painting, wrote articles and books, and became a university lecturer of art and literature. So those of you that said this was done by a young child, yes, she was approximately 8 years old, in hiding while she did this, and then it sparked her future career. You know, that's what she ended up doing for her living. All right, thank you. We can keep going on to the next one. You saw this one in the video as well. This is more of a, satire, sarcasm, maybe bringing in a bit of, I say humor lightly there. But I encourage you to look at these on the Yad Vashem website and to study them with your students. The Song is Over, this one is called. All right, next slide, please. Okay, we're going to do just a little brief about Irina Sendler and the Unsung Heroes. Irina Sendler, some of you may know, I'm guessing several of you might be familiar with the story of Irina Sendler. Sometimes as educators, when we enter like ARTEFFECT or these competitions or things like this, we sometimes forget why we're doing this and who made it possible. The founding idea, the founding project for the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes is Irina. This is a beautiful story of high school kids from small town Kansas that discovered Irina's story, discovered her heroic actions, and this is what led to the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes that we know today. So your students have the power to uncover beautiful, bravery, courageous individuals and impact people all over the world. I just want to make sure that we're kind of transitioning here in our minds as educators. We're going from looking at pieces of Holocaust artwork done by survivors and victims to now shifting to our students of, okay, we're not going to make artwork of what we think the Holocaust is or was. We are now going to start thinking about unsung heroes and how did they make us feel? How do we want to portray their actions? We're going to show just a short little clip here of Irina Sendler to get a better idea of what she did. Thank you, Connor, again, for getting the video all ready for us. That was great. So I want you to just keep in mind, there are several unsung heroes on the Lowell Milken Center website for the ARTEFFECT. I think there's over 30 that their stories are related to the Holocaust and other genocides. I want to give a special mention to Carl Wilkins, who I have traveled with to Rwanda, Africa, and he is still very much living and travels around the country and speaks to schools and students. So if you're interested in getting Carl to your school, let me know about that. But this is just a small example of how many there are on the ARTEFFECT website. Next slide, please. You have seen this before about the heroic traits and heroic actions of unsung heroes. Irina Sendler, Carl Wilkins, all the people that you saw display these traits. Next slide. Okay, we're just very briefly going to get just a tiny glimpse of some artifact student work. These pieces were all selected as finalists in the last few years for Artifact. When you're viewing the student work, either yourself or with your students, there's kind of 5 questions here that we want to ask them. What does the artwork depict? How is the unsung hero portrayed? Through a character trait or through an action that they did? What elements of the artwork are most effective in conveying the story of the unsung hero? What can we learn about the Holocaust or genocide from viewing this artwork? And what impact does this artwork have on you? Thank you. So I put up, I think there's maybe 5 here again, but I encourage you to go to the website and look at these with your students. This one here will focus on, this is one about Irina Sendler, the woman that started the whole thing, that started this whole Center for Unsung Heroes. Notice there in orange is a couple sentences about the artwork that your students will be asked to do when they do their artifact project. So again, I know we're kind of getting a little short on time and I want to make sure I respect everyone's time, but I just would like you to go basically seeing the shift from looking at survivor and victim artwork to then studying unsung heroes to now looking at student artwork and how they are choosing to portray what these people did during the times of the Holocaust or a genocide. There's Carl. All right. Thanks for sticking with me, everybody. I hope you found this helpful for you as you approach this topic that is sensitive, and we need to go into it with a certain mindset for ourselves and to our students. And I am not kidding. I want to help you and be a resource if I can. And so please feel free to reach out to me after this and we can figure things out.
Thank you so much, Megan. I wanted to, we are short on time, but I wanted to be able to ask if anyone has questions right now for you, and we can do a few minutes on Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, please, Megan has made herself available with her contact information, and she's prepared this wonderful lesson plan that actually takes you through the steps that she's guided us through here with all the additional resources. So I really want you to go back and, she's packed the artworks from the Holocaust as well as some of the sampling from the Artifact student artworks. So it's all there in the lesson plan. But if you have a question right now, please feel free to unmute or type something in the chat and we can address that.
Yeah, I have a question. First off, Megan, thank you so very much for providing the wealth of information. The question that I have, I want to know if you have any advice for us as educators, for us, like you mentioned suitcases earlier, like in the pictorial. Do you have any advice for us to sit down our own personal suitcases that may be filled with our personal biases or conditions prior to delivering the content and the information about the Holocaust, right? And I just think that it's important that we as educators constantly do the inner landscape in our garden to make sure we're not bringing our own weeds into the work that we're doing. So any advice for us as it relates to the delivery?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I think it's an ongoing journey, especially I feel in maybe today's world where a lot of things always come back to politics. And as educators, we are sometimes really having to be careful about what we say and how we say things and making sure we are not bringing in our like you said, our own weeds and our own baggage into the situation and into the classroom. Sometimes I think that's impossible, to leave it all at the door. And so I guess my advice is just to be, the more you know the facts of the Holocaust, the more you know the facts of a particular genocide, the more you don't have to fill in the gaps with the things that you feel, because you can just present the facts. And a lot of times students will start to make these connections without you even having to say anything. Sometimes they will make these modern day connections of, well, like, wait a minute, didn't I just read something in the news about, you go, oh, very good that you're connecting past events with things that are going on today, but you didn't have to say anything. You are presenting facts that have been heavily vetted, because I don't want any teachers to get in trouble for teaching the Holocaust, because it needs to be taught. And so I think just sticking to facts will help you, because a lot of us want to fill in the gaps when we're not quite sure what to do or what to say, or we're faced with difficult content. So the more you can focus on the facts and know the facts, the better, which takes work. That takes work on our part.
Thank you. We have time maybe for one more question.
Hey, Megan, this is just a quick logistics question, I guess, in terms of projects. So I know that your area of specialty is kind of Holocaust studies, but when you prep your kids to do unsung hero projects, I'm just curious about how you intro it. Are they all doing projects related to the Holocaust, or are you doing? Are they able to choose, and they're reading a lot of things related to that? How are you introing that?
Great question. So no, they are not all choosing unsung heroes from the Holocaust or genocide. I do a separate Holocaust literature unit earlier in the school year. And then when I approach the unsung hero portion of my year, then they get to pick and select their unsung heroes. Several of them do select Holocaust related or genocide related unsung heroes, because most of them are heavily impacted, and we do spend quite a bit of time on the Holocaust literature unit, but they get to choose. It's their choice.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think that we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much, Megan Helberg, for leading us through this topic. It's been an amazing lesson, and I think, it's so mindfully taught and so deep in the content that you've shared with us. You've given us so much to work with and unpack, so I really appreciate the time, and I know that we all feel that we have benefited from your guidance on this topic. So thank you again. And just to wrap up, I wanted to let everyone know there's a certificate of participation if you're joining us that you can download in the chat. I think Katie's also posting some resources about the competition. Just as a reminder, the competition for ARTEFFECT is open through May 1st, and so you can find those resources on our website. And Megan has generously shared her contact information, and so that is there for you to follow up. And so with all of that, I just thank you all again for staying with us through this series. This has been the end of our 5th series for online for this year, and it's wonderful to see so many people return, our ambassadors and newcomers. I'd like to unmute so that we could all send off with our collective voice and goodbye, and have a good evening to everyone.
Can I
So
say one
Connor,
more thing?
oh sure,
Can we
yes.
go back one slide? Okay,
One
I'm sorry.
slide, yeah. Tell us quickly your photos, because I
Yes.
know the tree is very
So
important.
when you're talking with your students about unsung heroes, sometimes some of them seem very far away, like many years ago, and that is true for many of them. This is Irina Sendler's tree at Yad Vashem. I got to see it this summer. There are 4 main trees when you come into Yad Vashem, and hers is one of the main 4, so she definitely has a special place of honor there. And then there's Carl Wilkins. I mean, so I think it's very important for us to tell our students that these are real people. They made real choices. We say like the man, the myth, the legend. Well, it's like, yeah, yeah, what these people did was not mythical. It happened. You know, what this legend is a human being like me and you. And so make sure that we humanize these unsung heroes, that they're not just some mythical creature out there, that there are unsung heroes amongst us all the time.
Thank
That's
you.
Carl at the Lowell Milken Centers in Kansas. Go and visit there. And that's us in Rwanda. Yay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Megan, for that reminder. Okay, well, so I think we're going to just unmute and say a collective goodbye to hear all of our voices, and then have a send off. Connor, if you would just unmute us and we could say goodbye, and thank you again all for joining.
Goodbye.
Everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Constantine.
Bye, everybody.